In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to launch an EC2 instance with the AWS CLI. At the end of the tutorial, you will have a EC2 instance running, and you'll know how to query various things and resources on AWS using the CLI. The EC2 instance itself will be a T2 micro based on the latest Amazon Linux. It will be launched into a custom VPC. It will use standard 8 GB storage, and we will have a security group open so that you can SSH into it if you want to. To complete this, you do need some background on AWS and EC2, and of course it's helpful to have some knowledge about operating systems and what virtual servers are. In addition to that, you should also have the AWS CLI installed and configured. I have another lesson on that you can find in the resources section. Here are the steps we will follow to complete this lab. First, we will kick things off by starting the lab session on Skillmix. This will get you the credentials you need to actually start the lab and run it. Then we're going to run through a series of commands that will help us prepare for finally launching the EC2 instance and checking on the instance status. You can go ahead and read through these. I won't read through each one, but just know that there's a couple of resources we have to create, and there's a couple of resources we have to query in order to have enough information and prerequisites to launch the actual instance. The first thing we'll do is launch the lab session so we can get the credentials to complete the lab. So go to the Skillmix Lab page and then click on the Skillmix Launch Lab button. This will go out and start to provision the environment. You have to wait until the access key and secret key are available. So I'm going to pause this now and come back when they're ready. Now that the credentials are available, I'll go ahead and copy them and put them in a text file for the moment. I can then go to my CLI and edit the credentials file to include these credentials. So on a Mac, the location of the credentials files is there, the root directory in a hidden folder called AWS. You can see I have some credentials from another lab here, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and just delete these. And then hit the escape key, :WQ. And there we go. We're ready to use the credentials. It's now time for us to start entering commands into the terminal. You can see here that I've got the terminal window on the top and then a little note-taking app on the bottom. I've copied and pasted the commands into the note-taking window, and I've done this so I can record the values that are kind of important to that command. For example, on one of them, the describe VPC, we'll need to save the VPC ID from the command, and it's helpful to have a nice, convenient way to store that. So just starting with the first one, you can copy that and enter it into the window. This command is the create key pair command. It'll create our key pair that's used to connect to the instance. There's only a few options we provide it. We give it a key pair name. We tell it the profile that our credentials are under, and we give it a region. Okay, so this is the response from the command, and what I like to do is copy and create a .pem file from this. So you can copy the value between the quotes and then create a file from it. Great, we now have our key pair. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and query the VPCs. We're doing this because we want to grab the VPC ID. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter that. We're using the describe VPCs command. We're just specifying our profile name and the region. Okay, when you issue this, you're going to get a large response. And really, I think two things you want to do. So you want to verify it's the right VPC. And if you look down here under tags, you should see the value Skillmix Lab. Okay? And then go up here and once you've verified that, grab the VPC ID. And then I just copy and paste it here into the window because we're going to use that value later on. When we launch an EC2 instance, we have to specify an existing security group. And so we'll go ahead and create that now. Here's the command. The one thing that we have to add to this command is the right VPC ID. So make sure that you add this from your environment. It can't be the same value as mine, okay? So then we can copy that and paste it into our window. So this command takes a few options. The first one is the security group name and a description, the VPC ID, which we just pasted in, and then we're going to make sure we are creating it in the US West 2 region, and we're using the Skillmix Lab credentials. Great. So now what we want to do is copy the group ID number and paste it in our window here. Now that we've created the security group, we can authorize an ingress rule. And so here's what that looks like. The ingress rule allows traffic to our instance. And so we are opening port 22, and the source can be any internet address. If you're doing this for your own production uses, you would definitely scope this down to just your own IP address. But for the purposes of this lab, we're going to have it created like that. The one thing you have to change is you have to add the group ID. This was obtained from completing the last step. So make sure to copy and paste that in there. And then you should be able to just copy and paste it like this. Okay, that completed successfully, and we now have a port open on our security group. The next thing we have to do is get our subnet ID. So if you understand VPC, you understand that there are VPC spaces, and those spaces are split up into subnets. And we have to find one of the subnets that is open to the internet. And we can do that with this command. The one thing you'll have to do is edit your command so that we have the VPC ID. So if you scroll up, you can see we can pull the VPC ID value back down, paste it here, and then we're ready to go. Okay, what we're looking for is a public subnet. So here's the first subnet. And if you see here in the tags, this is private subnet 1, and that one won't do. So we have to look for the next subnet. Okay, great. So this subnet says public subnet 1, and all we have to do is grab the subnet ID. Paste it there. Okay, if you're still in the previous command, you can press Q to quit. The next thing we need to do is find the AMI. So what we're going to do is run a command that will pull the AMI from Amazon. That's one of their kind of quick start AMI templates, they call them. And so you can simply run this command as is, and we will get that AMI ID. So some details about this. We're looking for AMIs from Amazon, and we're looking for Amazon Linux AMIs. And so this is the value that it is providing us. Copy that, and then just paste it into the window here. We are finally able to run the run instances command. But before we actually execute it, we have to complete the command structure, if you will. The first thing we'll have to add is the AMI ID, which you grabbed from the previous step. So add that there. Next thing we'll need is the security group ID. So if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see the security group ID starts with SG. Copy that and paste it in. Then we'll need the subnet ID. You can grab from this command. And that's it. We're now ready to execute this command. So if you paste that in, press enter. It's going to go off and start this instance. So it responded back with this JSON payload, and there's a bunch of information. So the first thing we want to do is grab the instance ID. Great. And then you can see that there is a state, and right now the state of the instance is pending. Basically, it's currently still in the launch process. So next we'll issue command to check the status of the instance. Okay, now we can describe the instances to see what the current state is. So we'll run this command, but we do need to paste in the instance ID before we can run it. So add the ID, and then you can copy this and put it in the terminal, and it will go out and query that instance to see what the current state is. And you can see now my instance is running. Yours may be in a different state. If it is, you can always just press Q to exit and then run it again. And you can wait until your instance is running. At this point, you could SSH into the instance. I'm not going to go into that here. There's another lab that shows how to do that if you desire to.